Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the new digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today we're back in New York. Mark Hochstein is a journalist and the editor of American Banker. The day after the Inside Bitcoins conference, he and I sat down for a wide-ranging interview on themes in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, altcoins, how it's all perceived within the legacy banking space, and much more. But first, Stephanie sat down with Peter John Maglavidi, the CIO of Feathercoin, to discuss lessons learned, alliances formed, and finding your place with an altcoin. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for our daily guest blog, show archive, and of course, tipping options. Enjoy the show.
Okay, hello and welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm here talking with Peter John Maglavidi, and you are from Feathercoin, right? You're the CIO from Feathercoin.
Yeah, I assume that responsibility. I do more of the strategic planning. I'm a developer as well, but not as good as the other guys, so I handle the other side of things.
Okay.
And then recently been working with both Feather, Phoenix, and World to kind of coordinate all three of those coins now.
Oh, yes, I heard about this. I saw a press release about that. So, okay, and until I had seen that press release, I never heard of Phoenix Coin or World Coin, just Feathercoin. But first, let's start with that. So, for our listeners who have never heard of Feathercoin, what is it?
Sure. Feathercoin is a decentralized currency. So if you're a Bitcoin fan, you'd probably also be a Feathercoin fan. Some of the differences that we have is in terms of some of the geeky things, retargeting, trying to control where difficult they can be. But more importantly, really the focus on Feathercoin is grassroots. I come from a not only an IT background, but a political background. I was one of the guys behind the meetups with the Ron Paul campaigns.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we thought we had an idea that could this translate to digital currency? Can you take a bunch of volunteers, and we have quite a few now, and get them motivated to just do something, just do good? And that's how we developed our community.
Oh, interesting. So is there actually like a libertarian ideology behind Feathercoin?
Oh, absolutely.
Explicitly? Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know about that, and I consider myself a liberty lover. Maybe not so much into like the political system, more sort of outside the system, I guess you could say. But I'm certainly have been following Ron Paul since 2000. Well, before 2008.
Yeah. I was the guy with the Free State Project and all those guys.
Yeah.
I went to New Hampshire. I was the waving signs.
No way. Well, actually, I live in New Hampshire. So.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I moved there because of the Free State Project in 2006. So.
Yeah, but the idea was, so with Ron Paul, I'd spend my weekends making signs with a bunch of guys. And I was like, at first, the idea of volunteering, I'm like, how much fun could this be? I had a blast. I had so much fun doing work. So when I met Peter Bushnell, the lead developer of Feathercoin, I thought, could this work? Can you make it fun? Can you make it something where people want to contribute? And then everybody celebrates the success. And that's really the direction of Feathercoin.
Wow, that's cool. So how do you accomplish that with a cryptocurrency?
Yeah, that's a good question. It started off very small. When I got on board, there was maybe 20, 30 of us. And we have over 10,000 members right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just a matter of, I asked people what they like to do. I said, hey, what do you enjoy doing? I'm an artist. Hey, we have sculptors. We have musicians. We have people that aren't necessarily your typical crypto techie guys. And I just figured out, I thought, is there a way to kind of make this work? So, for example, if we have a project, we have artists that will do the graphics for us. We have a sculptor that does a little stuff on the side for us.
Yep.
We have business people that like doing press releases like you've seen. Mm-hmm. It's the idea of Stone Soup. I was always a big fan of that in elementary school, that you start off with this idea of, this is the best soup ever. If everyone just adds a little bit to it, it'll be awesome. And people have fun. It's a place, our community is very much against trolling, as the kids say, and we don't accept it. We just say that's not us. I wanted to be a place that my parents would enjoy going to.
Yeah.
Because you go to some forums and it's a little nasty at times. And people, I don't believe that. I believe that you should say what you want, express your feeling, but attack the points and not the people. And we have a community that, I don't handle that. They step in and go, appreciate what you're saying, but at Feathercoin we do this.
Wow.
So I'm really proud of what developed. It's, I don't take credit for that. We just had some really bright people that came aboard, and I happened to be the mouthpiece at the time.
So, yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty decentralized, just like the nature of all cryptocurrency
Absolutely.
is supposed to be decentralized, right?
Yeah.
Is there a Feathercoin forum? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, forum.feathercoin.com. We have a pretty large forum there.
So go there, no trolling.
Yeah, no trolling allowed. But, we're not going to sit around and try to lambaste you and be like, don't, you're a horrible person. We'll say, look, attack the issues. Because believe me, we attack. Just recently, there's things I've done that not everyone agrees with. But you attack the issue and not the person, and we can respect each other that way.
Yeah.
And that keeps development moving forward.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like, what are some of the conflicts, I guess, that come up and get resolved?
So one of the major things is the partnership between the three coins.
Oh, I see.
Because up until recently, this has not been done. I work also in the proprietary IT sector with schools, and I've helped merge schools together in terms of sharing resources. So I've seen this work before, but it hasn't been proven here yet. So there's some skeptics, and I don't blame them. I want them to be skeptical. The whole idea behind this movement is to do your own thing, challenge each other. If you want my role, I say by all means, please take it. It's volunteer-based.
Yeah.
But we hash things out. It's a respectful type of conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear about because honestly, I see some parallels to the Free State Project or whatever, trying to organize Occupy New Hampshire or whatever, those kinds of activism.
Yeah, I got interested when I first got involved with crypto. I went on, I'm not going to say the website, but I went on one of the forums. And I'm saying, okay, I had this great idea for meetups. I've done this before with Ron Paul. And like 20 comments, like 19 of them, you suck. That'll never work.
Wow.
And I went, that's not the community I want to be in. So I can either complain about it or help build something that I felt would be what I want to be involved in.
Yeah.
So I took the other approach. I met a couple guys from Feather, and they said, you know what, we want to build something cool. You want to come aboard? And we started off just throwing ideas out there and then building a very friendly environment. And we also have a lot of technical things we're working on with Feather as well, but I'm most proud about the kind of the libertarian ideals.
Yeah.
In the end, I think that's what's going to make us successful, more than the retargeting or how the difficulty is adjusted. That's important, and I believe in the security. But ultimately what matters is, do people want to get involved? Does my mom understand Feathercoin? Can you purchase products at a bar with Feathercoin? And yes, you can.
Now you can,
you
right?
Can,
yeah,
right.
There's one bar.
Plug there. So.
I saw that too. Yeah. So okay. Well, I am actually curious about some of the geeky stuff. Like, it's cool to hear about the community and everything.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it.
But I also want to hear about what. I know that Feathercoin is based on the script algorithm, like Litecoin was the pioneer in that area, right?
Yes.
With the script algorithm. And so what else is different about Feathercoin than other crypto coins?
Yeah, right now the major differences with us, and this is about to change again, is 504 blocks, so it's about 4 times quicker than what Litecoin is. And the reason why is because we were left in what I call difficulty hell. Before we did our hard fork, we had a bunch of miners really excited about Feathercoin, and they jacked the difficulty up really high. Mm-hmm. And then when they left us, we were floating in space for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, and you couldn't find a block.
Right.
Oh, okay. So that's something we've talked about on Let's Talk Bitcoin before, where, the difficulty of the network goes way up because a lot of people are mining, and then suddenly they drop out, or it could be one party that's a very powerful miner or whatever, and then they drop out, and then suddenly the difficulty is high, and they can't find a block, and then it can't adjust back down.
And with products like CoinChoose and some of these auto switchers between the most profitable coin, these are problems we didn't see back in 2011 with Litecoin, for example. So for better or for worse, Feather was challenged with a couple interesting issues. The second thing is not only the
Wait,
time.
so hold on a minute. How did you solve that? Was that the 51% attack?
That's a different one.
That's a different one. Okay.
Yeah.
So, with the difficulty problem where the difficulty got really high and then the miners dropped out, how did that get resolved?
Sure. So we had to hard fork it at block 33,000, which was it's a major deal. That's something you never take lightly. But we did 2 things. One is we reduced the retargeting to 504 blocks, so we couldn't be left in limbo that long. And the important thing is now it can only adjust up or down by 41.4%. So in other words, if difficulty starts skyrocketing, it won't skyrocket like it did. It can only go up in increments.
Okay.
And since the hard fork, we've stayed within probably about a difficulty of not within 50, out of 50 difficulty. It's put us right where we need to be. So, and that was all Bush. That wasn't my idea. He figured it out, and it kept us right where we need to be now.
So it kind of put the brakes on the difficulty changing.
It did. It kept it consistent. Next to Litecoin, we are the largest hash network for Scrypt.
Okay. Are there any other Scrypt-based coins, though, besides Litecoin and Feathercoin?
Oh, yeah. There's... it seems like endless at times. There's, I'd say, at least 40 I can probably name off the top of my head.
Wow. Oh, my.
Maybe a lot of your listeners aren't familiar with some of the smaller ones, but there are Scrypt coins for Final Fantasy. There's Scrypt coins for gas. I mean, there are very specific coins. Where they'll end up, I don't know, but there's a lot of forks out there. A lot of people experimenting, which is not a bad thing. I enjoy that. I think it's important for people to try new things, to make mistakes like we did in the past. And then be willing to admit it. Saying, hey, this is an issue we didn't foresee. How are we going to fix it? Because in the end, that's what matters. How do we move the currency forward?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so a hard fork, that means like you make a different blockchain, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
everyone has to grab, it's not an optional download. You have to grab the new wallets.
Yeah.
So you have challenges with that involved as well.
Yeah.
We worked with some of the forums and helped coordinate that. So they were really good about getting the news out there and allowing us to kind of ramp up to it.
Okay. In that case, could you just upgrade to a different client, or would you have to send your coins from the old client to a new client or something like that?
You can upgrade. You can use the existing wallet.
Okay.
But again, you have to get the upgrade finished. So it's not something you ever want to take lightly.
Do you think that shook the trust in Feathercoin in the community, or
sure,
or the Bitcoin community?
It's hard to say. There's always going to be those that don't like us.
Yeah.
And look, I'm okay with that. But oftentimes when I dig around, the ones that don't like us the most, they have coins somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I respect that. Push your coin, that's fine. What we did do, though, for the miners is we offered 10 BTC. And what we did is at each point, we offered a bonus. Whoever found that block went ahead and got 1 BTC. Mm-hmm. And then I contributed an additional 5 on top of that for the last one. So the person that hit the last one got 10 BTC for hitting the 33,000 block.
I see.
We're not trying to bribe the community. What we want to do is say, look, we know this is an inconvenience. What can we do to help get people motivated? We turn it into more of something that's a positive.
Yeah.
We could have left it alone and said, you know what, forget it, it'll sort itself out. But that doesn't do anything for the community. That would lose trust, I think, quicker than say, look, it's not working out. We have a solution in place. We talked about it with the community. We executed.
Yeah, I mean, I really like your attitude about that because this is just, it's an unknown frontier. Like, we're trying new things.
That's exactly it.
Stuff's going to happen. And
it does.
And it does, yeah.
We see that over and over.
So you're rolling with it.
Right.
So,
and you mentioned the 51% attacks.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that next. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, and the truth, I'm not going to hide that. We've been attacked a couple times now. We've been attacked with mash of hash. We're talking 7, 8 gig, which is unheard of on all coins.
How do you think, do you think it's one person, or do you think it's like a botnet, or?
I'd rather not say. I have a pretty good idea. What I'll say about it is this. There are some bigger coins that definitely need to protect, that want to protect their investments. And if you can make Feathercoin look unstable, if you can send massive amount of Mount miners at us, it can, make people move away from us. But that's not the case. It's funny because we look at our price over the last couple of weeks. We went from about 7.9 cents to 12 cents. So it hasn't shaken the community, but we take it serious.
Sure.
Something new needs to be solved. Litecoin doesn't have this issue because they have the network to support them. But if something happened with them, and I'm not saying I hope that happens, but let's say, for example, they don't end up on docks. And let's say, for example, that they lose some of their miners. They're Scrypt-based. They'd be in the same boat we are. So what we feel like it's our responsibility to solve this. And one thing we're implementing is something called an advanced checkpointing system. I'd rather have Bush Star talk about that. Well, I'm a PHP guy. He's the main guru coin guy. But we're working with Sunny over at PPC Coin to come up with a solution that we hope proliferates to all coins in the Scrypt community.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? We got beat up a bit, but I feel like it's our responsibility as one of the leaders in altcoins for Scrypt to come up with solutions. We don't hide that fact.
That is really interesting that the 51% tax didn't seem to affect price negatively. Or did it go down like after?
Very little.
It's hard to have when you don't have far to fall, it's hard to have a price crash, right?
It is, but even like if it goes from 7.9 to 7.7, that's pretty significant for us.
Sure.
So, for us, we're almost double the last couple weeks now. And I think it's just because we're doing the right things in the community. I feel like people support the idea of Feathercoin, and they trust we're going to do the right things and try to fix this. We're not hiding anything. We have a section on our forum that says attacks. I mean, here's what's happening. We want input from the community. We're open on how we want to solve it. And I think ultimately that's what people care about. And then our great PR people are out there getting Feathercoin in bars. We have different merchants coming aboard. We have a back-end system being developed specifically for merchants that we're about to release. People are excited, and I'm just happy to be part of this. I feel like I was invited to the party.
Yeah. So, okay, tell me more about this partnership with Phoenix Coin and WorldCoin. First of all, what are they? I have not heard of them.
Absolutely. So Phoenix Coin, these guys come from the casino world and adult world, actually. That was their market, and they decided
that.
So
it's like foreign coins.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'm into that.
They've had quite a bit of success in that market, and they wanted to kind of ease into. They like the idea of cryptocurrency.
Yep.
Of course, their customers being casino and adult, anonymous or somewhat anonymous transactions. So they came up with a coin. What we felt like we could bring to the party is a bit of guidance in terms of we have a big community, we have a lot of developers. So we're helping them kind of transition from that world into cryptocurrency. And then WorldCoin is very focused on middle-sized business. They have a lot of background with banks and accountants and areas that Feather has no experience. So what I thought about, I talked to Peter about is, Peter Bushnell, our lead developer, is we can't be everything to everyone. We're very good at some things. We're very good on the development side, community development, experimenting, but we certainly don't have the experience with the business side, and we definitely don't have the adult world and the casino world. So I met with John Carr, who's the leader of Phoenix Coin, and I just out of the blue said, look, here's what I'm thinking. It'd be nice if we can, rather than compete against one another, why don't we figure a way to pool resources? I mapped out a strategic plan because I'm a geek that way. That's like my porn, right? I'm like, here's how we can make it work, and here's how we could, go ahead and move forward as a group. And that's what came about.
Cool. So, okay, what is involved in the partnership? I mean,
Sure.
What is it doing?
So, for example, right now we're about to release the Unix Bridge, and that's going to allow us to do instant transactions between exchanges, merchants, and customers. So basically, think about almost like a bank account. If you deposit at Bank of America, they have systems where you can, I've seen a commercial for this. If you have your bank account with Bank of America, and your babysitter does as well, you can instant transfer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the same kind of idea here. And that's what Phoenix Coin is good at, is they worked on back-end systems, credit card processing, banking type systems. Feather did not. We had no experience. So they're bringing that to the group, and then all three of us were able to use it. And we'll be talking more about that real shortly. CoinDesk has an exclusive on it. They already have the article written. We walked them through it. I just got to wait till we get through penetration testing.
Okay, cool. So it's some kind of system where potentially, like, you could pay for something with Feathercoin that you might have only previously been able to pay for with Phoenix Coin.
Sure.
Or
So, for example, let's say you want to sell something.
Yeah.
Let's say you're selling. Do you sell anything?
I'm a freelance voiceover artist.
Okay.
So I sell my voice.
Sell your voice. Okay. So let's say you have an MP3, a sample.
Yep.
And you want to sell it for like a couple dollars.
Yep.
And you and I want to exchange Feathercoin for it. How would we go about that?
I guess I would send you a Feathercoin address and you'd pay me, right?
So you'd have a wallet, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would go ahead and send it to you. You wait for a couple confirms to verify that it's legit, and you have these coins now, right? Okay. Now, what if my coins were on an exchange? I want to go ahead and pay you. So now I have to go ahead and go to the exchange, withdraw, wait for confirmation, go to your wallet, wait for confirmation. What this will do is allow me, if the exchange, you, and myself are all on the same network, within a second or so, we can move money around or coin around.
Oh, okay.
And the fact that it's already been on the network, it's already been confirmed. So we can verify that the transactions are legit. And for you, you don't have to keep a wallet. And we have code already for you. Click a button, you can pop on your website, and you have an instant in on the bridge.
I see.
So we're trying to solve. What we're trying to do is solve problems.
Is that similar to Ripple? Like, have you taken any inspiration from Ripple on that?
Yeah, I'm still looking to Ripple. I don't want to say anything about Ripple right now.
Okay.
I'm still looking into it. There's some things I really like as far as the multiple currencies.
Yep.
Some of the centralization and the way they handle the coins, I don't know if I necessarily agree with. But the idea is how do we make it easy for people that aren't crypto nerds?
Yeah.
My dad has a small business. How does my dad accept Feathercoin without having to deal with wallets and resyncs and all those issues? He clicks a button, he pastes it on his website or has one of his guys paste it on the website, and it will just instantly work.
Yeah. But isn't that kind of centralized?
It is.
Okay.
So there is some centralization with that, of course.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop others from opening their own bridges. The idea is this is our bridge to demonstrate the concept, but we encourage other people. If you like that, great. I would love our coin to be on your bridge in instant transactions.
I see.
And that's the challenge we face is some coins focus on just working on the coin itself, and then they say, well, the guys that develop services for it are going the wrong direction. The other guys are saying, well, you're just working on the coin, you're going the wrong direction. I think that's a compromise. I want to be able to show what can be done with the coins. And by all means, if you want help developing, implementing, our teams will be happy to help you. But for right now, our customers want an easy way to do it. Our bars want an easy point of service, right? You know, our people that are selling products want an easy way to offer these coins. Because I talk to them and I say, you know, we really want you to deal with Feathercoin. They're like, oh, we like the idea, but we're not techs. You know, we don't understand this whole wallet. I want to make it so, hey, do you have an online banking? Yeah, we do. Great, do the same thing.
Is that pretty much like the future where you see Feathercoin going? Do you have other ideas?
We do. Gosh, there's so many things we're working on right now.
Yeah, give me a preview if you can.
Okay, sure. One of the biggest challenges right now is my mom. I always think my parents, because they are not computer tech at all, let alone crypto.
Yeah.
How does my mom buy Feathercoin? I mean, think about that process. How do you buy Litecoin?
Oh, you got to go on
process.
BTCE.
Yeah. You go through that process, and you have to deal with an exchange, and oh my goodness. To get Joe User to buy anything besides Bitcoin is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things involved.
Even to buy Bitcoin is a challenge.
Right, that's even a challenge.
Yeah.
Good point. I mean, and then smaller ones, good luck on that.
Yeah.
With this bridge, we're working on the bonding and we're working on the regulations where you'll be able to buy it through fiat. Fiat currency, you'll be able to buy our coins directly with cash.
That's really useful.
Yeah,
cool.
The challenge, of course, is this regulation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we have to get in place, but for the Feather side, this is all new to us. You know, we haven't had to work with accountants or lawyers and those things.
Yeah.
Phoenix has that experience, so they're pulling those resources in, and we're guiding that thing. So eventually, you'll be able to sell it for cash, deposit with cash. Basically, anyone that wants to get a hold of the coin, they'll have an easy access to it. It's not next week, next month, but it's close.
Cool.
I refuse to give a date again because we missed our big release for the bridge.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you've probably heard about that. So
I didn't hear about that.
Good.
It's okay.
Because I've heard about that. So I learned something when it comes to crypto development when it's done.
Yeah.
I'm going to say when it's done.
When it's done. Okay, fair enough.
Good.
Peter, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Really appreciate sitting down with you, kind of Indian style.
Yeah. We had a powwow. This was fun. And where can people find us? Like, is it just feathercoin.org or?
Yeah, you can find us at feathercoin.com or learn about the or the partnership at Unox. That's UNOCS.com.
Cool. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info. EasyDNS is the Swiss Army knife for your domain names, helping meet their customers' individual needs since 1998. EasyDNS has been an outspoken critic of SOPA and CISPA. EasyDNS was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and now they are proud to sponsor this show. Do business with a company that shares your values. Get a 13% discount when you pay with Bitcoin. Go to bitcoin.easydns.com and be sure to use discount code LTB.
joined this morning by Mark Hochstein, editor of the American Banker magazine. That was an interesting conference that we just attended. It was a little bit of a different crowd than I think I was expecting. There was a lot of minor there. There was a lot of venture capital there that we saw. There was a lot of regulatory institutions there. It seems like there are some changes that are kind of coming to Bitcoin just because these people are taking an interest and these particular types of groups are getting involved. I'm kind of curious for your take. What did you think of the conference?
I got a lot out of it. I was sort of impressed at the eclectic mix of the crowd. You had your exchange operators, you had your entrepreneurs, you had your VCs, but you had a few people that I know going way back from American Banker, banking lawyers, compliance people, people who have been in the payment, in the mainstream payments industry for a while. And it's, considering the price of the conference, I don't think it was purely curiosity that they were there. I think that people who have an expertise in compliance and who have been doing compliance for money services businesses and money transmitters probably see an opportunity to sell their expertise and their advice, particularly given that there's a lot of concern now among Bitcoin-related companies about compliance and also just a lot of uncertainty about what exactly the rules are depending on what your business model is. And of course, the most interesting thing I noticed as I was leaving at the cocktail hour, there was someone from the FBI there, and he had a big name tag. I didn't catch his name, but it said FBI Special Agent. So I guess he wasn't a secret agent, otherwise he wouldn't be advertising on his name tag. Oh, and Booz Allen Hamilton had a couple people there.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, and I know that they have actually. I mean, I've talked to those guys. Actually, funny enough, it was like couple weeks before the Snowden thing broke. I had talked to them. They are paying attention to the virtual currency space. I mean, they're a government contractor, obviously, but also they, I think they do some consulting for banks, and they've hired people who have worked at like Treasury, worked at OFAC, worked in AML compliance. You had that element, and then you had the serious business element, but you still had sort of the kind of the ideal. There was a little bit of the idealistic Bitcoiner crowd in there too, which is nice because that's. It's a very, very endearing group of people.
So you've been watching this space now kind of from I don't want to say outsider perspective, because you do sort of integrate into the community to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Do you have like a timeline or any sort of guess at where, we'll find ourselves in 6 months from now? Because again, it seems like this compliance stuff, we're starting to come to a head on it. And right now we have some guidance, but there aren't really any rules, and the guidance could change. So, I mean, was there a vibe, you thought, that this is going one way or the other?
There was some nervousness I sensed. Tony Galippi from BitPay said that every Bitcoin business has been dropped by at least one bank. And he mentioned that there was an actual merchant, not an MSB or a money transmitter or a Bitcoin exchanger, but like a merchant that just accepted Bitcoin and got dropped by their bank just because they accept Bitcoin as a form of payment in addition to, whatever other forms of payment they take. So, I mean, I think that there's even the supposedly Bitcoin-friendly banks I hear are, at the very least, full up on the amount of business they'll take on. I'd be lying if I say I have a crystal ball and I know how it's going to play out, but I do think that there has to be some kind of a confrontation. I use that word a little bit loosely, but that there's there could be congressional hearings. I wouldn't be surprised to see that before the end of the year. The best outcome would be is if it prompted like a candid discussion about all these rules, these legacy rules, and these legacy systems and these legacy regulations that we have that are sort of being kind of shoehorned to apply to these new business models. I think that there should be, and I've sort of gotten at this in some of the things I've written, and John Matonis would put it in even stronger words in the columns that he's written, that people need to take a hard look at the whole AML regime in policy circles, and look at what are we getting out of it? How much is it really benefiting us? And what's the collateral damage? If we are going to a cashless society, which I believe we are doing slowly, and that's, like I say, that's on mostly a good thing, if you consider cash inefficient. But if we are going to go in that direction where it's going to be a world of mostly or all electronic payments, shouldn't we have to carve out a space for payments that are anonymous? And actually, I think I'm even framing it a little bit too narrowly already, because if we can get rid of physical cash, that's all well and good, but there should be some form of digital cash. And, Bitcoin happens to be the most successful digital cash that there has been. There have been other attempts at it. A lot of them just kind of flopped. Bitcoin's gained the most traction. And it's not, I've talked about anonymity before, and I stand by the position that we have to live with that, and that there has to be a space for that, and that there are perfectly legitimate reasons for people to want to make payments anonymously, whether it's in person or whether it's on the internet. Another aspect of cash, and this came up at the conference, and this was great, because you had Tony and you had like some other sort of merchant processing types presenting, is that for certain types of merchants, one of the virtues of cash is the irrevocability of transactions. I fear that like the next wave of trash talking about Bitcoin is going to be focusing on that. They're going to be focusing on, it's all a rip-off, and if the virtue is supposedly that there's no chargebacks and consumers are going to pay for stuff online, they're going to get ripped off. Even as we get rid of cash, some merchants should be able to have ways to get paid that are irreversible, or at least irreversible, or not unilaterally reversible. One of the great things about credit cards, and this is a valuable thing that the credit card companies provide, is that there is consumer protection, there is fraud protection. That is valuable, no question, but it shouldn't be mandatory. There has to be like lots of different flavors in the world that we go to.
But is that the way that society is moving? Because, it seems like we're moving towards a place where risk is being socialized to a certain extent, and, you look at something, in America specifically, you look at something like what we're doing with healthcare, and it seems like we're moving away from an opt-in system to one where you opt out almost at a cost. Let me back up for a second. We're talking about anonymity in money, and I think it's important to define really what that means. Mm-hmm. Anonymity in money, as I understand it, basically means separating the concept of value from the concept of identity, because in a world, of credit cards, it's not that you necessarily possess the money as a person, it's that your financial identity has the rights to spend the money. Whereas with something like cash or like gold or like Bitcoin, possession is the entirety of ownership.
Right. And that's what makes it cash-like. And once you spend it, it's gone. That has its benefits and its drawbacks for both parties.
So it's not one size fits all, basically, when it comes to money, then.
Yeah, exactly. And I could see a world where a merchant will accept payment from credit cards or debit cards or PayPal, or maybe we won't call them credit cards in the future. We'll call them credit accounts or something like that, because there won't be actual it'll all be on a phone or whatever. And then they'll accept digital cash, which could be Bitcoin, or it could be one of the altcoins, or it could be Bitcoin 5.0 or whatever. That the market will find some kind of a balance where if you don't trust the merchant or it's a big ticket item, you might choose to say, I'm going to put that on my credit card. If I was going to buy an electric guitar or a computer, I'd probably want to put it on my credit card today, unless I really, really trusted the merchant and thought they had a good reputation. And the merchant can say, okay, well, you can pay us that way, but there's a discount if you pay us with cash, Bitcoin, or, some future altcoin. One of the nice things now is that after all the legal settlements and antitrust settlements with the credit card companies, is that merchants now can do a little bit more steering towards preferred payment types, which previously the Visa MasterCard rules barred them from doing.
It was more of a monopoly system.
It was. Now it would be nice if, instead of having to work that out in the courts and having to pay lawyers and have congressional hearings and all this stuff, it would be nice if the market could force that to happen as opposed to bludgeoning it. But that's happened. So merchants merchants now, what they're allowed to do now is surcharge for credit cards, which is almost the same thing as saying a discount for cash. It's almost semantic. Why couldn't you have a world where a merchant has a surcharge for the protected payment or the identity-based payment, better way of thinking about it, and then a discount for the possession-based payment, the cash-like payment. Different strokes for different folks.
You moderated the panel on essentially cryptocurrencies and free speech. It was Bitcoin and free speech.
Yeah.
But really broadly, it was more talking about the tools for free speech.
Yeah.
That was one of the most interesting panels, I think. A lot of really interesting things said there. I was wondering, moving forward, what role do you really feel like cryptocurrencies or identity-less money forms can play in our society? I mean, like in a practical sense.
One of my favorite stories that we've looked at lately on BankThink, which is American Banker's blog, is the issue with the Somali communities. This has come up in Minnesota. It's coming up now in the UK, where these Somali immigrants send money home, and in Somalia, that's a big part of GDP. It's a completely ravaged country. It's getting harder and harder. There's fewer and fewer choices. Here in Minnesota, they would use the Hawala brokers. Hawala is this ancient system, goes back thousands of years, and it's totally trust-based, right? It's like, I want to send money to my auntie back home, so I hand the U.S. cash to the Hawala broker in Minneapolis, and he calls up the $100 or whatever, and that guy calls up his friend, the Hawala broker in Somalia, and says, give the equivalent of $100 to this guy's auntie, and then at the end of the month they settle up, and and then they take a fee out of that or whatever. There's no records. It's that's just and
so it's like a relationship-based money transfer system.
and that Western Union does not serve Somalia. I'm pretty sure PayPal does not serve Somalia. So that's the way to get it over there. Last year in Minnesota, the last community bank that was banking the local Hawala broker had to cut off that relationship because of AML money laundering regulation concerns. And there was a big uproar, and then there was people were pressuring U.S. Bancorp, Wells Fargo, which are the two biggest banks in that market. The individuals were saying, we as consumers are going to pull our deposit accounts unless you start servicing money transfers to Somalia. And that put them in a bind because it's, from the bank's perspective, it's a big risk for them to be in any way involved with facilitating money transfers to a country like that, because if it turns out that somewhere along the food chain someone sent money and it ended up in some terrorist or suspected terrorist account, they're going to get a big fine, and they don't want to they don't want to touch it. The amount of money involved is probably not worth the risk to them. I'm not going to get all moral and high and mighty toward the banks because they're in a tough spot. So it was a big PR headache for them. U.S. Bancorp, to their credit, did eventually announce a pilot program with Dahab Shalil, which is the biggest money transmitter serving Somalia. And I don't know what the status of that is. That was about 6 months ago. In fact, I called them a couple weeks ago and I haven't heard back. So I'm going to stay on their case to find out how that's going. Over in the UK, more recently, Barclays had a very similar situation. Barclays started dropping relationships with money transmitters. About 80 of them, and about a dozen of those, I think, were serving Somalia. And they got raked over the coals in the press in the UK. You're going to cause a humanitarian crisis, Barclays. And it might cause a humanitarian crisis if you really cut off remittances. But again, Barclays looked at what happened to HSBC. HSBC guys didn't go to jail, but they did have to pay a big fine, and they got a lot of bad press, and they had to go to congressional hearings and have these pompous politicians.
It was very inconvenient.
Yes, it was inconvenient, and it's for them life's too short. So so they made a business decision to drop those. Now Bitcoin, I don't know what internet connectivity is like in Somalia. But if you have an internet connection, that's pretty much all you need to get a Bitcoin from point A to point B. So the only other thing you would need is just someone to be willing to pay for Bitcoin in whatever the local currency is. So it just cuts out all this nonsense. I just spent 5-10 minutes explaining this Rube Goldberg chain of events that in the end hurts poor people, all in the name of stopping terrorism. Bitcoin is neutral. Bitcoin doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're a hard-working immigrant sending money home to mom, or if you're an evil terrorist. It just does what you tell it to do, and it does it very, very well and very fast. I think that if we try to make money not neutral, there's a lot of collateral damage. And is that the only way to address the issue of terrorism?
I think I'd like to dig a little bit into this one-size-fits-all kind of world that we're starting to live in. It's sort of strange, because on the one hand you have all sorts of technologies that enable people to get exactly what they want at the exact, the exact specifications. You've got things like 3D printing that are continuing to expand that further play on that meme. And yet you look at the way that rules are made and the way that people's lives essentially are governed. And it seems increasingly we're moving towards one-size-fits-all solutions that wind up not really fitting many people at all. So, I mean, in a global world, this is a problem that Bitcoin runs into, because a microtransaction in the Western world is a large transaction in many parts of the underdeveloped world, the third world. I don't know what the nice way to say that is.
The emerging markets.
Emerging markets, there you go.
Some of them aren't quite emerging, but...
yeah, but they will eventually.
Yeah.
So many things are changing to make it so that it doesn't need to be that way, but I don't understand why it seems like more and more with regulation we're finding ourselves in that situation.
I think a lot of it is just that the regulations are outdated and they're trying to be applied to new things that don't quite map to the old categories. And you see this outside of Bitcoin too. I mean, money transmitter licenses, it's not just Bitcoin businesses that this is a problem for. I mentioned last time, the sad story of Aaron Greenspan and FaceCash. I read a law professor article that came out very recently talking about these state money transmitter laws, and some of them define money transmission so broadly, this guy writes, that they could apply to bike messengers or app stores. And these are laws that were meant to regulate Western, and I'm not talking about AML here, I'm talking about state money transmitter laws. They're originally designed to regulate businesses like Western Union from a consumer protection standpoint. So you give the money transmitter your money, making sure that it actually gets to the place it's supposed to get to, that you don't get ripped off. But they're being applied to businesses where there really isn't that much risk to the consumer. Like businesses that basically act as an agent for the payee are having to get this licensing, and this guy argues quite persuasively, I think, that you got to take a hard look at those laws and look at, is there really risk of harm to the consumer? Because if there isn't, if the business is accepting payment on behalf of a merchant, even if that intermediary doesn't pay the merchant, there's no risk to the consumer. Why do you have to make them pay these fees and add all these compliance costs? Because it's discouraging startups, it's discouraging innovation, it's creating higher barriers to entry. Protects incumbents, which is nice if you're an incumbent.
It's good work if you can get it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not necessarily good for innovation and competition and all these things that we supposedly believe in as a free market liberal society. Bitcoin might help force the issue. In some ways, a cause for optimism would be that now that there's a big debate about surveillance broadly, all these revelations keep coming about what the NSA is up to, that people are questioning the third-party doctrine, the whole doctrine that, if you have records stored with a third party, you have no, expectation of privacy, which has been around forever in banking. I mean, Bank Secrecy Act, which I think is 1980 or earlier. The Supreme Court ruled long ago in a banking case that if you have no expectation of privacy, for records stored with a third party with a bank. So that's where it all got started. It seems like a long shot to say that we'll reevaluate this in light of the Snowden revelations or whatever. But, the Amash Amendment was only narrowly defeated, which I think surprised everyone, surprised the people who were for it, surprised the people who were against it. The administration had to scramble the jets to defeat that. It looks like there's very strong entrenched interests that would want to straitjacket, the new technologies, but optimism would be probably the only productive way to look at things, because if you're pessimistic, it's almost close to giving up. I mean, you can be realistic, and you can be careful, and you can. I wouldn't advise someone to blatantly break laws, because that's very risky. I think if people speak up and they are honest and candid about these issues, then it might make a difference.
More than 300,000 users and counting trust blockchain.info. It's a Bitcoin wallet service and a wealth of Bitcoin information, and is completely free to use. With a blockchain.info wallet, you'll get the convenience of a web wallet and the security of a desktop client. Blockchain.info is also a block explorer. You can use it to see Bitcoin transactions in real time, check the balance of any Bitcoin address, and view many handy Bitcoin charts, all for free. See what they have to offer today at blockchain.info.
You're listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin, the premier audiocast providing news and insights that cover the rapidly evolving world of digital money. Our twice-weekly show include analysis of late-breaking news, updates on key technical, business, and regulatory issues, and in-depth interviews with the key people driving the new digital economy. Let's Talk Bitcoin offers sponsors an attractive way to reach a targeted and savvy audience. For more information, email sponsors at letstalkbitcoin.com. So let's talk about alternative cryptocurrencies for a second. Mark, have you looked at any cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin?
Not really. I've listened to you guys talking about Litecoin and whatnot. I had an interesting conversation with one of the speakers at the conference who was working on an altcoin. I think it was like a local altcoin. So this was at Ever Charlie Shrem's bar, and it was after a couple of drinks, so I don't remember the details, but I think it's great that there's all these different mutations coming out. The more the merrier. First of all, because even though Bitcoin is very hard to shut down because it's decentralized, there is that whole... I was actually pretty shocked when I heard on your program, and this came out at the San Jose conference, that something like 48% of the mining power is in... What was it, one pool or?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that they're very consciously trying to keep it below that threshold because they understand that the value goes away, once you get up to 51%. It is conceivable that someone could do the 51% attack thing, and of course, if you destroyed Bitcoin, someone could always start it over again. I think the more the merrier. You said, one size fits all doesn't work, and a lot of them might just, fail or go nowhere, but you can't knock anyone for trying. That's the nice thing about Bitcoin and that whole community is that they're experimenting and they're doing things and they're building things. Everyone's talking about projects. They're talking about starting a company. I'm starting a startup. I'm starting an alt-chain. They're creators. They're not just bullshit artists like me, or a lot of people in the media kind of sneer at Bitcoin and either say oh, it's a waste of time, or you're off in your own little world, or it's a retreat. It's not a retreat. It's very social, both in terms of the aspect that it's peer to peer, and that just in terms of the meetups and events like Satoshi Square. It's very social and interactive. They're building something, and who knows how long it'll last. But when people scoff at that, I say, well, what have you done? They're trying. Frycoin is interesting. I would actually kind of want to try it. I know that it's a very different philosophy behind it than the Austrian economic perspective, but it's kind of interesting.
So Frycoin is an altcoin that introduces a demurrage feature, which basically means that the currency over time disappears. Actually, it's not that it devalues; it's that literally some amounts of it go away. Is my understanding. I also have not used it, but that's my understanding of it.
It addresses the hoarding issue. If you believe that's an issue,
right?
Just as an aside, hoarding is a judgmental synonym for what our grandparents called saving.
Right.
But admittedly, yes. In a weak economy like this, where inflation has not been that great, even though despite monetary policy, I could see why people say, well, why do you care about inflation? Why do you cryptocurrencies don't have to be Austrian. You could have a Keynesian cryptocurrency, I suppose. You could have a modern monetary theory cryptocurrency. One idea that keeps coming up is the government going to co-opt cryptocurrency? And I wouldn't mind that as long as it really was like physical cash in the sense that it had the irreversibility and the pseudonymity. I don't think that's going to happen, but it is nice to imagine. But, I think the more the merrier. So this guy that I was talking to, who was talking about one of his altcoins, he had a great analogy. He said, like, in a forest, you need like lots of different types of foliage or trees.
Right, monoculture doesn't generally work quite as well.
Right, exactly. So maybe it should be that way with money. I mean, even Dave Birch, who is not very popular in the Bitcoin community because he's always like the person quoted in Bitcoin articles, sort of damning it with faint praise. But even he takes that position that you should have lots of different types of stores of value. You should have and so in the future there will be like government currencies and private currencies. And people will keep some of their value in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, some of it in dollars and some of it in kilowatt hours. The experimentation, it's very, I see little downside from it. Like we were saying earlier with the merchants, the more alternatives, the merrier. One other thing I want to mention about neutrality that I actually didn't get a chance to say on the panel, but it's just a great example. If you go to a site called CoinDL.com, they sell content, they sell ebooks, they sell music. There's a musician in Iran named Mohammed Rafiq. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name. He's in Iran. He sells MP3s of his music through this site. It is not illegal under the sanctions to buy music from someone in Iran. I have confirmed that. I called the U.S. Treasury and I specifically asked them that. They said there is an exception for information. As a practical matter, though,
right?
I mean,
functionally, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, it would be very difficult were it not for Bitcoin. For this guy to sell his music anywhere outside the country he's in. But I, in the United States now, can go online and for minuscule price, download his MP3s. And by the way, people still do pay for music. It's a musician's trying to make some bread, and in a country that is under crippling sanctions, as our president put it. If it helps him even a little bit, that's good for humanity. The album is it's sort of.
Is it to your taste?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
more about the support.
Yeah, it was more about the support. I mean, it's okay. It's sort of like kind of music you would hear in like a spa when you're getting like a microdermabrasion facial or something. But
I see.
It's a good thing to listen to when you're burning aromatherapy candles. But right. That's not an album that I would want to go to jail for.
Right.
But
it's good that you check that.
Yeah. So.
You occasionally write about Bitcoin, but American Banker, it seems like, has been running quite a few stories about Bitcoin between you and John Matonis.
Yeah.
What kind? You speak to financial professionals and people who are specifically in the industry.
Yeah.
What type of a reception have you gotten from your audience? Are you getting, people saying, "Why are you covering this?" Or is it more curiosity, or what's
There's a lot of curiosity. It's all over the map. For most bankers right now, I wouldn't say Bitcoin is top of mind for them. They've got a lot of issues. They've got the Dodd-Frank legislation, which is thousands of pages long, and a lot of it hasn't really been put into practice yet because the regulators still haven't written all the rules. They've got the Basel III capital regulations, which are still being ironed out. Interest rates, low interest rates have made it very hard for them to make money in their traditional business of taking deposits and making loans. Long-term rates are starting to tick up. But that's been a mixed blessing for them because the mortgage refi boom that they've been enjoying, they've been getting a lot of earnings out of for a while, has been, just came to an abrupt halt. Now they got to lay off all the mortgage people they've been hiring. So bankers are very conservative by nature. They're risk averse, at least when it comes to certain types of risks. They've got a lot of things on their plate right now. There's some skepticism. Obviously, you can tell from behavior that they're wary of dealing with Bitcoin-related businesses, probably just out of a compliance risk concern. But there's also curiosity about it, and I think there is some recognition that there needs to be innovation. We did a series on BankThink recently called The Future Model of Banking, which John contributed to, and John thinks that there is an opportunity for the banks to serve these businesses, to help them on the compliance front, because the banks, if nothing else, know compliance very well. He said it's kind of like their last mulligan in payments before they get truly disrupted. I'm very glad that John writes a column for us. I really like having a voice like that in the mix. I mean, it's not core quite yet, Bitcoin, but it's part of I think a core theme for financial services now and in the years to come is disruption, and Bitcoin is one of the most disruptive technologies there is. It's funny because in banking we ooh and ah over things like mobile remote capture of checks. That's right. That's really just sort of like a
kind of update to an antiquated technology.
It's a patch. At one point that Shaq did on that sort of concluding panel we did.
That's Shaquille Khan.
Yeah, Shaquille Khan. Just the absurdity that in 2013, I can send you an email and you'll get it in seconds. You can download an MP3 in seconds, or I can send you any kind of data file in seconds. But to transfer money to someone, even like $10 through the banking system is such a hassle, and it can take days, and it can cost more than the amount of money that you're sending.
Well, this is that one-size-fits-all thing again.
Exactly. And I think that an important example is the automated clearinghouse is a payment system that is collectively owned by the banks. Sometimes if you look on your bank statement, you see ACH. That's what that means. It means that this money was sent through the automated clearinghouse. It is one of the lower cost payment systems in the traditional banking world. About a year ago, there was a vote among the bank members over whether to basically make it mandatory that everyone be ready to do real-time payment or same-day settlement of funds on ACH. A majority of members voted for it, but they did not get the 75% that they needed to pass it. So instead, what NACHA, that's the association that oversees ACH, is doing is a voluntary same-day settlement. What that means is that it's really only same-day if both the sender's bank and the receiver's bank are participating.
I mean, it seems like it's inconvenient for customers, and if it's inconvenient for customers, then it should be a problem as far as the bank is concerned. So what is the incentive for the banks not to do this?
There were objections over the cost of updating systems. There were concerns about fraud.
But isn't this a bank-to-bank system?
It's a bank-to-bank system, but that someone has stolen account information or something.
I see.
They want
they want time to be able to find that out and reverse it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And of course, no one will admit this, but some of the suspicion was the big banks didn't want to cannibalize wire transfer revenues. And this has been reported that it was the big banks that killed it. I mean, some of the little banks objected, but little banks, I think, generally were either for it or indifferent. It was the big banks that torpedoed it in the end, because I think they get a disproportionate share of the votes because they do more volume on the system. Bitcoin has shown that you can, not that Bitcoin is necessarily the only way or the best way, but it has shown that it is possible to transfer a digital monetary asset almost instantly and have it be done, right?
Is there a space for alternatives? I mean, this is a question that I've really been thinking about a lot. With systems like this, with the ACH, the reason why they can get away with that and not have to update to more modern sort of standards, really, because that's what we're talking about. Like Shaq was saying, you can't send small amounts of money or even large amounts of money fast, but you can with these alternatives. And to a certain extent, you can apply that same sort of standard to the current monetary regimes that we live in, where we have money and everyone is inflating their currency around the world, and so long as everyone inflates at the same time, basically, when I say inflate, I mean add to the monetary supply. So long as everybody kind of plays along with that game and keeps in tandem with each other, then nothing really changes. But when you introduce alternatives to the situation, that seems like it's dangerous to the equilibrium of the system. I've been wondering whether there is a place in a system like we have now for any kind of alternative that fixes these problems to the detriment of the existing system.
I hope so. I mean, I really hope so. The reaction to Bitcoin so far, you could read it either way. I mean, the FinCEN director did say, we welcome the innovation of virtual currencies, and we just want them to follow the law and follow the rules. We'll see if that's lip service or how sincere that is. I think in the long term, it's and we talked last time about a little bit about the Anti-Fragile book. In the long term, it's better for stability to have lots of centers than one center. If you buy Nassim Taleb's argument, one center, one point of failure, it's more dangerous than if you have lots and lots and lots of different heads and lots of different nodes. I think it's in everyone's interest to be a little bit more flexible and just, you know, say, like, let 1,000 flowers bloom, to use a phrase coined by a guy who didn't mean it, but it's a great phrase, and that's the way that I think about it. You know, even if it threatens your, because I mean, I don't think Bitcoin tomorrow is going to take away a whole lot of revenue from Western Union or PayPal. You know, and it might over the long term, but supposedly we believe in a society that competition's healthy, and that competition will, Bitcoin could be good for banks in a long-term sense, in that if it forces them to become more responsive to customers, and it forces them to streamline and to, you know, not have this confusing, like, your available balances, your present balance. Like I can't believe they still do that in 2013. You know, as a consumer, I never got that, and I know it's because they've got these old systems and it's complicated. You know, maybe it's comparing apples to oranges to compare the two, but it's just funny. Like, you know, Bitcoiners get frustrated when they have to wait 20 minutes for a confirmation, but that's going to be what the standard is, and that's going to be what people demand. I think it's in everyone's interest to let the alternatives do.
Mark Hochstein, American Banker, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, always.
Thanks for listening to episode 40 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's show is provided by Stephanie Murphy, Peter John Maglavidi, and Mark Hochstein. Music was provided by Jared Rubens. If you can't get enough original thought and discussion, read our daily blog at letstalkbitcoin.com, sign up for our weekly newsletter at theweeklybitcoin.com, and participate in our listener interaction area at letstalkbitcoin.com/talk. See you next time.